The company blamed for millions of lost jobs is losing more money than almost any company in history, and losing more of it every single quarter. Let that sit for a second. We've all heard the pitch by now. AI is coming for your job. Your role, your team, your paycheck, replaced by something that doesn't sleep, doesn't complain, and doesn't ask for a raise. And the man behind the biggest version of that pitch is Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, the company that makes ChatGPT. He's told the world over and over that AI is the future of work. Cheaper, faster, better. The math, he says, just makes sense. Except here's what nobody's saying out loud. OpenAI itself can't make that math work. Not even close. I want to walk you through what's actually happening inside the biggest AI company on the planet. Not because I think you should feel bad for Sam Altman. You shouldn't. But because what's happening to OpenAI's balance sheet is a preview of what might be happening to your job, your investments, and honestly, your electric bill. This isn't a tech story. This is a personal finance story wearing a tech company's clothes. So let's start with the problem. Because the problem is bigger than most people realize. OpenAI is losing tens of billions of dollars a year. Not once, not as a rounding error while they scale up. Every single year, and the number keeps growing. Last quarter alone, OpenAI pulled in $5.7 billion in revenue. Sounds like a lot, right? Except their operating margin that quarter was negative 122%. That means for every dollar that came in the door, they lost more than a dollar just running the business. To bring in $5.7 billion, they burned through nearly $7 billion doing it. Think about that using something you actually understand. Imagine you own a lemonade stand, and every cup you sell costs you $2 to make and sell. Cups, lemons, sugar, your time. But you only charge $1 a cup. Customers are lining up around the block. Business looks incredible from the outside. And you are going broke faster with every single sale. That's OpenAI. Except instead of lemonade stands, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people using ChatGPT every day. And every single one of those conversations is technically a receipt for a loss. Here's the part that should really catch your attention. Revenue at OpenAI actually grew an enormous amount, from $3.7 billion to $13.1 billion in a single year. That is a genuinely rare growth curve. Almost no company in history scales that fast. But costs grew right alongside it, from $12.5 billion to $34 billion in that same year. The company isn't struggling to grow. It's struggling with the fact that growing costs them more than it earns them. Now, the data shows OpenAI's growth is real and historic. But here's what that growth number doesn't tell you. Growth without profit isn't success. It's just a bigger hole being dug faster. A company can have the best growth chart in the world and still be walking toward a cliff. So how does a company lose this kind of money and still get called the future of the economy? That's the hidden cause. And it comes down to one uncomfortable truth. OpenAI has been selling something it can't actually deliver profitably to anyone, including itself. Remember the pitch. AI replaces expensive humans with cheap software. That's the entire sales pitch to every business in America. Fire the team, hire the algorithm, watch your costs disappear. And companies believed it. They believed it so completely that last year, businesses poured somewhere between $30 and $40 billion into AI tools and AI transformation projects, according to research out of MIT, and the results came back. 95% of those companies saw zero return. Not modest return, zero. Now, to be fair, some critics point out that MIT's window for measuring return was only 6 months, which might genuinely undersell slower, longer-term wins. That's a fair caveat, and I want to be upfront about it instead of pretending the data is perfect. But even with that caveat, when 19 out of 20 companies see nothing, you don't need a 10-year study to know something's off. And it's not just an abstract statistic. Uber's own chief technology officer went on record and admitted the company blew through its entire annual AI budget in a matter of weeks. A Fortune 500 company. Weeks, not months. It gets smaller and stranger from there. A 4-person startup called GetSwan spent over $113,000 in a single month on AI tokens. That's about $28,000 per employee in 1 month on software subscriptions. One developer somewhere out there burned through $1.3 million in OpenAI tokens in 30 days, chasing a project that apparently justified it, at least to him. So if the money going in is this staggering, and the return coming out is this close to nothing, where exactly is it all going? Straight into OpenAI's pocket. Except it's not making them rich. It's making them broke faster. Because remember, they lose money on almost everything sold. Here's where you start to see the whole shape of it. Sam Altman went on what might be the largest spending spree in corporate history over the last year. $300 billion in deals with Oracle, $100 billion with NVIDIA, 90 billion in AMD chips, $250 billion in cloud computing time from Microsoft. All told, close to $1 trillion in commitments signed in about 12 months. $1 trillion. From a company that loses money every single quarter. And this is where Sam gets very good at something else entirely. Not building a profitable company, but making an unprofitable one look healthy on paper. Ask him how much OpenAI lost this year and he'll tell you a number, 14 billion. Manageable almost, for a company this size. Except that number quietly leaves out what OpenAI pays its own employees in company stock. Count that, and the real loss jumps to $26 billion. Nearly double. You are not a statistic in someone else's spreadsheet, and neither is the money you're spending on subscriptions, tools, or investments tied to companies like this. The average Silicon Valley loves to talk about mean nothing until you check what they're hiding underneath. And yet, in the middle of all this red ink, OpenAI closed a $122 billion funding round, valuing the company at $852 billion. They've since filed paperwork to go public, with some estimates putting the ask north of $1 trillion. Investors are lining up to buy a piece of a company that loses money on purpose, structurally, by design, every time someone uses the product. Now here's where I have to be honest with you, because I think this is the part most people, including me for a while, get wrong about how Wall Street actually works. Losing money isn't automatically a red flag in the early years of a massive company. Amazon lost money for years while it built something enormous. The difference is, investors were betting Amazon's costs would eventually shrink relative to revenue. With OpenAI, the numbers are moving the wrong direction. Margins are still deeply negative, even as revenue explodes. That's not early-stage growing pains. That's a structural problem in how the product is priced against what it costs to run. So what happens next, when the money that's propping this up eventually gets more expensive, or slower, or simply runs out? We've actually already seen the pattern play out over and over in real companies. Step 1. Leadership decides it's time to cut costs, and the fastest way to do that is cutting people. In the first quarter of 2026 alone, roughly 80,000 tech jobs were eliminated, and about half of those were tied directly to AI adoption. Standard Chartered cut 7,000 jobs betting on automation. Meta, Amazon, and others followed the same playbook. Step 2. The AI is supposed to pick up the slack, and it keeps failing in ways that are almost impossible to believe. Volkswagen spent a fortune building one unified AI operating system across every brand it owns. The result was a 20 million-line piece of software riddled with bugs, delaying the Porsche Electric and the Audi Q6 by over a year and costing 1,600 jobs in the process. Pizza Hut rolled out an AI system to manage delivery scheduling. Deliveries that used to take under 30 minutes started taking 45 or more. The result was a $100 million lawsuit, not from customers, but from their own franchise owners. Step 3. When the dumpster fire becomes obvious, somebody in leadership panics and decides the answer is more AI, not less. NVIDIA's own CEO reportedly told his engineers they should be spending AI tokens worth half their annual salary, or they weren't being productive enough, which, by the way, is a fairly convenient thing for the CEO of an AI hardware company to say. Out of fear of layoffs, employees comply. Some Amazon workers have even admitted to using AI for completely unnecessary tasks, just to inflate their internal usage numbers and look productive on paper. Step 4, the budget runs out anyway. Microsoft actually pulled back on using Claude Code internally, because the more their own employees used it, the more it cost them. Uber's chief operating officer said publicly, there's currently no proven link between spending more on AI and actually shipping a better product. You are watching a loop. Cut the people, trust the software, watch it fail, spend more anyway, run out of money, and start over. Now pause for a second, because here's the fact that should actually keep you up at night more than any of the numbers so far. Somebody has to pay for the electricity and water these AI systems run on. And it's not Sam Altman. It's not the shareholders. It's regular families in regular towns who never asked for any of this. Residents in Maryland got hit with a $2 billion bill just to upgrade the power grid for an out-of-state data center they don't even use. Nearly half of Americans, 47%, say they don't want a data center anywhere near their home, and people are starting to fight back in ways you don't usually see. Voters in Festus, Missouri recalled the city council members who approved a data center construction. Seattle's city council voted 9-0 to pause new large-scale AI data centers in the city for a full year. Towns from Ohio to Indiana to Michigan are weighing similar moratoriums. Near Detroit, the Ypsilanti Community Utilities Authority passed a year-long halt on water and sewer approvals, specifically aimed at data centers. This isn't over, by any means. Some of these tech companies are already suing towns that try to block them, and some states have passed laws stripping local governments of the power to say no at all. But it tells you something important. The people closest to the actual cost of this boom are the ones sounding the alarm loudest. So here's the question underneath all of this. If AI is genuinely this powerful, why does it require this much force to push onto people, onto employees who are told to spend money on it or lose their jobs, onto towns that are billed for infrastructure they never wanted, onto investors handed numbers that quietly leave out billions in stock compensation? Or is some of this simply a very expensive way of trying to justify money that's already been spent, with nothing yet to show for it? I don't know exactly how this ends for OpenAI specifically. Nobody does. But I do know what it means for you, sitting on your side of the screen. And that's really the point of this video. If you work anywhere near a company that's leaning hard into AI adoption right now, don't assume your job is safe just because leadership says efficiency is up. Ask specifically what's being measured. Actual output and revenue, or just usage numbers, like the ones Amazon employees admitted to inflating. Usage isn't the same as value. Watch for that gap in your own workplace before it watches you. If you're invested in AI companies, directly or through a fund, understand what you actually own. A company can have historic revenue growth and still be a bad investment if its costs are growing just as fast or faster. Growth headlines are not the same as profit. Read past the headline number, the way we just did with OpenAI's $14 billion loss that was actually $26 billion once you counted everything. If you live anywhere near a proposed data center, pay attention to your local utility rate filings, not just the press release about jobs and investment. Maryland residents didn't find out about their $2 billion bill until it was already happening. Your city council meetings are public. Show up, or at least read the minutes. And broadly, be skeptical of any pitch, anywhere, that tells you a tool this expensive to run is somehow going to make everything cheaper for you. Somebody somewhere is paying the difference between what something costs and what it's sold for. Right now, that somebody is OpenAI's balance sheet, ratepayers in Maryland, and companies burning through annual budgets in a matter of weeks. The question worth asking every time is simply, is that somebody eventually going to be me? So let's go back to where we started. The company blamed for taking your job is losing money every time it does that job. We opened this video thinking that was ironic. A little bit of schadenfreude maybe. But it's not really irony anymore, is it? It's a warning label. When the company selling the future can't make its own numbers work, that's not a reason to laugh. That's the moment to get quietly, carefully honest about how much of your own financial life you want tied to a promise that hasn't been paid for yet. This was never really a story about OpenAI. It was a story about how easily we mistake spending for progress and headlines for evidence. What's one thing in your own budget or work life you've assumed is AI-proof, but you're honestly not 100% sure anymore? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious what people say. If this hits differently, subscribe. Finn posts every week, and he doesn't waste your time.